Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show, a podcast by SaaStock. Here we interview SaaS founders from around the world who've been there and done that, as they share the ins and outs of how they built their businesses, their operations, their path to securing investment, and more. Our mission with the podcast is to help you, the founder, learn how to scale your SaaS, maintain your well-being, and navigate the complexities of this ever-changing industry. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, and together we'll explore the good, the bad, and the ugly in the journey to SaaS success. Welcome back to the SaaS Revolution Show. I am your host, Alex Theuma, CEO and founder of SaaStock, and delighted to be joined today by Job van der Voort, who is the CEO, co-founder at Remote. How are you doing, Job?
Doing well. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. And I know Remote is a remote organization, which makes a lot of sense. Where are you dialing in from today? Where would Remote be?
Well, I mean, Remote is all over the planet, but I will be, I'm always in the Netherlands here at home.
Okay.
I live close to Amsterdam.
Okay. Good to know. And I see some Star Wars memorabilia behind you as well. Bit of a fan?
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah, there's a lot on screen and off camera as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Job, thanks so much for joining the podcast today. This is ahead of you coming over to Dublin for SaaStock Europe in October, which I'm looking forward to, where you'll be speaking there. And so hopefully many people who are listening will also be attending, and we'll get to see your talk there. But in advance of that, they want to get to know you better. I'll start with the question: who is Job van der Voort?
Well, other than the founder and CEO of this company, I am a father of two, husband of one, an avid cyclist. I like the sport. I have a lot of hobbies. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm
an avid Star Wars fan as well.
Avid Star Wars fan. Yeah, I'm like the classic nerd. I like all nerdy stuff, you know. I think nowadays everybody's a nerd, but like I like all nerdy stuff as well. So yeah.
Did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
No, I went through different things when I was young. I think I first wanted to be an astronaut, and then I wanted to be a journalist, and then I studied to be a scientist. And I did that for a little bit, neuroscience, before I pivoted into startups.
Okay, it could have been a brain surgeon, but now scaling a SaaS business. Wonder what's easier. What do you think?
Well, I did surgery on the brains of rats, so
okay.
It's fun to do as well. It's not easy either, but it's fun to do as well. But I prefer this job. Yeah,
good stuff. And tell us a little bit about then. So you mentioned you doing neuroscience, but you became, or started a SaaS business, right? So what's the founding story of Remote? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. When I left science, I tried to start my own startup. Went nowhere, ran out of money, so I had to find a job. And eventually I joined GitLab, where I ran product for about 5 years. And in that time, we built a whole distributed company there where we hired people from all over the world. And the one big problem we faced with doing that was, how do we pay people? How do we make sure that it's actually easy to hire somebody in another country? And after those 5 years, I decided I was going to solve it myself, which is why we founded Remote.
And how did you meet your co-founder? Was he also at GitLab?
No, he wasn't. No. So when I was still in science, my then girlfriend, now wife, a friend of her boyfriend was Marcelo, my co-founder. So we were third wheeling together and tried to start several startups over the past years. Remote is the first one we made any money with whatsoever.
And when did you start the business?
2019. January.
2019. And what data can you share about the company? So how it is today?
Well, we're pretty big. We process billions of dollars in payroll. We have almost 2,000 employees working at Remote today. And it grew pretty fast, I would say. We had zero revenue in 2020 and now in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, that's pretty fast going, and congrats. So as we say, and I know you're within your talk, at SaaS Europe, the word hyperscaling, I think, I'm not sure about blitzscaling, but hyperscaling is in that. And effectively, it's what you've done, and must be pretty difficult. And I want to get into that a little bit. But you mentioned 2020, there was zero revenue. So launched 2019, 2020, there was zero revenue. Now we're in the hundreds of millions. How long did it take then from 2020 at zero to get to 1 million ARR? And kind of what was the tipping point there, and maybe some learnings of how you got to one?
Yeah, I think we ended 2020 with $1 million in revenue. I'm not sure. I have no idea when the point was, to be honest. When we started the company, every single day that I was working, I would meet with prospects to learn about what is the kind of product we should build, and also to form a relationship with early customers, so that when we launched, there was a whole group of people that were willing to work with us. And so it was not very much, it didn't feel like, we had to struggle once we launched. It was more like, it was a struggle to build the product because it's really complex and really hard to build. But once it was live, it just went really fast. Also kind of helped that we were called remote, and there was a pandemic and everybody started working remotely. So a lot of people knew how to find us, and that certainly helped us a lot. And so I think the time it took us to go from 0 to 1 million was really, really short. But I honestly don't remember. I have no idea. I mean, it might have been in 3 months. It might have been 6 months, but it was not much longer than that, I think.
You think there was a bit of, I mean, like every successful startup, has a bit of luck on the way. Do you think choosing the name Remote was a little bit of luck, or was it a bit more than that?
But I chose the name very specifically because I believe very much in remote work. And so I went out of my way to get the domain name. So the choosing itself wasn't luck. That was hard work. But the fact that the pandemic happened, yes, that was very lucky.
Yeah. Was it expensive, the domain name? I mean, you don't have to share numbers, but getting remote.com?
Yeah, it was incredibly expensive. We paid in equity partially, so that equity became worth many millions.
Yeah, okay. Well, whoever sat on that domain is probably very, very happy now.
Yes.
Good stuff. Well, I do want to go into that kind of hypergrowth journey, as you said, because like at the end of 2020, then you were, hitting 1 million in revenue, but now you're in the hundreds of millions and 2,000 employees, and it's only 2024. So in 3 years, pretty much you've gone from 1 to hundreds, right? Which is incredible. It's a real outlier, I would say, story within SaaS. So I guess kind of the hypergrowth moment, like, after you'd hit one and started growing really, really fast, I'm sure there's this correlation, as you say, like with COVID and everybody having to be remote, almost for a 2-year period. But I guess in your words, when was that hypergrowth moment? And as a business, were you set up for it?
It was essentially when the pandemic hit, all right? Because we knew we were sitting on something that was going to get really, really popular really, really quickly. And at the time, we didn't have a product. So March 2020 is when the country started locking down. And on May, I think it was May or June, we opened our doors to customers and we onboarded our first customer. Essentially from that moment on is when we started hyperscaling. And I remember we had a team of maybe 15 people at the time. And in 2021, I believe we started the year with about 40 people and we ended with 650 people. And so, that was hyperscaling. And you cannot be ready for that because the moment your company doubles in size, it's a new company, right? Because there's more new people than there are people that have been around for a little bit longer. And so there's nothing you can hang on to at that point. So, and that happens a lot when you go from 10 to 600. There's a lot of times when your company doubles the size. From 10 to 20, it feels like a different company. From 20 to 40, it feels like a different country. From 40 to 80, it feels like a different company, etc. And so, and if that happens in a really short period of time, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. So I think the one thing that we did really well was, at GitLab, we wrote this handbook for everybody. It's still available. And so we did the same with remote. We opened it, so you can find it, remote.com/handbook. And we still use this very actively. And that helped a lot because it basically gave us handhold and told people to look at the handbook. It's in the handbook. It's in the handbook. And we spent a lot of time working on that. So you have some sort of foundation to build all of it, or maybe a scaffolding to hang your organization on. And then just have ambitious people and put them to work. And I think that's it. And then just be along for the ride and try to do your best to make it all work. I think that was all we can and had to do. And to some degree, what we're still doing, although a little bit more structured than that. But yeah, we were not ready for it. Nobody can be ready for that kind of scaling.
Yeah. And given that growth, as you said, to like 600 employees, I think, within a year's time frame, were you spending most of your time hiring? Or like, what did your role as the CEO kind of look like?
Yeah, my whole memory is like a big blur of that period. And I think, we were just always working while there was a pandemic. But I spent a lot of time hiring, but I also spent a lot of time doing all the other things, which is sales and product and making sure it doesn't fall apart. And in our case, we have you call it SaaS, but like remote is a lot software, but it's a lot of real world stuff as well, because we have a lot of entities around the world. We process a lot of payments, and all of those things are not wrapped in pretty software. And so there's a lot of me just going to banks or calling with banks, trying to open accounts, going to countries, trying to open local entities. That was a really large part of it as well. And to this day, although nowadays we're much better at it, but at the time it was just doing everything. Whatever was on fire is what I was dealing with. And sometimes it'd be hiring, but sometimes it'd be other things. Yeah.
I would imagine as you hyperscale, that a lot of things break. Perhaps they break more. Maybe, I don't know whether you can comment on that than if you were just bootstrapping at, 10% sort of like month over month, right? But how was it for you? Were a lot of things breaking, and then were you having to do a lot of firefighting, fixing solutions, or were there things kind of in place to kind of help smooth these bumps and the things kind of breaking?
No, there was nothing in place. Everything would break all the time. Yeah. I still remember we had at one point, we calculated that we would run out of rows in the spreadsheet within like 2 weeks' time. And so we had to like find a replacement and build one really quickly, because we had this spreadsheet that part of our business depended on. And it happened several times. And then there's no way you cannot prepare for these kind of things. You have to be all hands on deck trying to prevent. So yeah, it was only firefighting. I think for at least that year, 2021, it was only firefighting the whole year through, just trying to like build a product while also massively scaling an organization at the same time. Everything would break all the time. I have this really vivid memory of like every 2 months, something major would be very, very broken, or we'd discover another piece of the puzzle that previously was not a problem and now became a massive problem, because at scale, everything breaks. And so, yeah, it was a really big problem. I think one of the things that we didn't have problems with was like our core tech stack was really good. So we built remote on Elixir, and which is really performant. So we never had a lot of like traffic kind of or like data kind of problems. We were both quite experienced, my co-founder and I, in building like large scale software. So that was never really a problem. I think the real problems we really ran in against, it was operational problems and human problems and this kind of stuff. And that kept coming. And again, I don't think it's ever over, especially as you continue to grow. But while you're scaling at that speed, it's really painful. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're using the words, and you just use the word like painful, right? And like operational problems are painful for any business. Human problems are painful for any business and any manager or CEO. And as you're growing so fast, you're having more than most, right? How do you personally like cope with that? I'm sure there's like an excitement of like, we're growing really fast, right? This is incredible. But there's also all these problems, and these problems, I think, let's say for me or any other, founder sort of listening, nobody likes problems, right? Because they can drain energy a little bit. It's like you wake up, you've got a new problem, or you've got 3 problems or something like that, and you have to put energy into that. And like how do you sort of like mentally kind of like, get yourself through that and pull yourself through that, having to fight problems and fix those and the pain, as you say, like all the time?
For me, it's the fun part. Like I do this because I like solving problems, and it's like the challenge that I think is really exciting. I would always say this is a great problem to have, there were a lot of great problems that we had at the time, right? If you grow really, really fast, and it's a luxury problem, and if you just embrace it like that, then everything becomes much easier. Just embrace it in the most honest possible way, which is that, wow, we get so much interest that we have to solve these really difficult problems right now. It's for sake of, our success, or at least the direction of success. To me, that was never difficult. What is difficult is how it affects the rest of your life, right? Because you end up doing longer hours, or you're distracted. So if your partner and your family might not appreciate it very much. But like, to me, it's like a great luxury to have problems to solve rather than having to seek for problems, which I think is a greater challenge almost in a startup, that if you don't know what to solve, then you're starved from challenge that's really boring, and you have to seek for an audience, and you have to seek for that challenge, or you have to build features to attract customers. That's much harder than, you get all these problems thrown at you, and as long as you solve them, things will move forward effectively. So I don't know. I never felt it like that. I always felt like this is a good thing to have, and I always enjoyed the problem. And I agree, not everybody feels that way, but I certainly did.
And so choosing the name Remote, it wasn't luck. It was hard work, and it was deliberate. There was a bit of luck, with the pandemic happening and everybody going yeah. remotely. But how did you get your name out there? How did you get the products out there? What was the I guess kind of the marketing channel that really kind of worked for you guys? Like how did you get all this inbound, all the customers?
Yeah, I mean, again, like our main marketing channel was pure luck and timing, right? Luck in timing and luck. I think the other thing is, I often say this, talking to prospects from day one, like it took us 1.5 years to build our product to the point where we could sell anything. But I spoke with customers. Well, I still remember we were supposed to start the company on January 25. So we quit our jobs. My last day at GitLab was January 15. And my plan was on January 25 to start. So I gave myself 10 days of a vacation. On January 18, I had the first call with a prospect. So I minus 7 days before we started the company, I was talking with companies, with prospects. And I did that until we launched and afterwards, so that I could continuously get feedback from, well, what is it that I should be doing? What is interesting? What are companies looking for? What are they struggling with? And these companies, they remember you, right? And so that gives you a huge leap in the beginning. I think many people get distracted by building for the sake of building. But when you are doing one activity, when you are building, you are not talking to customers and you're not actively marketing it. And a lot of marketing is just reaching out directly to companies and saying, oh, I am building this thing, or are you in? I want to discuss this thing with you, right? It's not a hard thing to do. You don't have to do it. You don't have to blast 1 million people. You can just text a few people on LinkedIn, which is what I did, and you'll be fine. And so that's exactly what I did. That's how we got most of I think all of our first 20 or 50 customers or so were some of these companies that I spoke to. And then once things get rolling, and the thing that we did is we just spoke about what we were doing on LinkedIn and elsewhere. We just reached out to companies. I really don't think that there's much magic to that beginning, right? Like getting to, depending on your product and how much it's priced, so it might be more difficult than others, but especially if you're building like a B2B SaaS and you have like a somewhat high price product, just talking to customers, which you do by reaching out on LinkedIn, which is what we did, is not difficult. It's just a matter of doing it. And it's kind of a grind because you have to do much more than you think you need to do, but it should be a good grind because you learn a lot.
And are you still reaching out on LinkedIn? I'm assuming probably less so, but are you still speaking to prospects, still speaking to customers a lot as part of your day-to-day or week-to-week?
Yeah, I think you always are. I think we're continuously building new products and I continuously engage with all sorts of people running all sorts of companies. And so any opportunity I can to speak with another company, be that at an event, be that because we contribute, or be that for another reason, because we are trying to get somebody to be a customer, I always ask them, like, how do you do this now? These problems that you saw, how do you do payroll? Tell us how you do payroll. Are you happy with it? How could we take it over? I think if you're passionate about something, and especially if you sell a B2B product, it's great because you're probably going to be in communities where it's kind of straightforward to ask people, what are you using now instead of us? Like, and how can I convince you to do that? So yeah, I still do it a lot.
Is there any, I don't know what your year over year kind of growth rates were, but I imagine they were like pretty exceptional. And again, like, as you say, a bit of fortune there from, giving that boost from COVID. Now you're in hundreds of millions, within 3 years. Is there any pressure on you, or whether it's just you're putting it on yourself or from investors to maintain like the growth rates? Or are you kind of like, okay, look, this is not sustainable forever, but we'll be, happy with whatever, 50% or 100%, year over year, and just accepting that it's still going to grow and it's going to grow well, but maybe it's going to grow slower. It's going to get to 2x at some point. But how do you view that?
Yeah, no, I think once you reach a certain milestone in terms of revenue, it's well understood that you cannot grow at more than 10x per year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it happens sometimes, like OpenAI. No, I don't think anybody's going to be sad that we don't do, I don't know what we did, 20x year over year now. No, nobody's going to give me a hard time for that. I think if you grow well, you show that you're an effective company, that's more important, right? And then, yeah, I mean, we'll do our best. I think with me, I mean, my co-founder and I, Marcel and I, we are harder on ourselves than anybody externally. And so I never really felt like, oh, I have all this pressure to grow faster externally, because internally I feel like I always want to go faster.
What's your top tip for a CEO going through hypergrowth? I can't imagine it's a huge pull, but what would be a top tip, something that really kind of helped you?
Sleep well, eat well, work out. That's it. The rest you just have to figure out. Like that's literally your job. But I don't think there's like much you can say. Okay, if you're going through hypergrowth, you basically have to do all the things all the time, and I'm sure it's going to be completely unique for every single CEO. And so the only thing you have to make sure is that you're clear-headed while doing so. And so eating well, sleeping well, working out is like...
What do you do to help you sleep well?
Oh, those things.
Yeah. Exercise.
Time. I have two small kids. The sleeping well is a matter of going to bed early. And it's very easy to make late nights, but usually you're going to be paying the debt double the next day, right? So go to bed on time, find time to relax. I think one of the things that helped me a lot was to value the time that I spent thinking about work as work. So don't measure my personal productivity as like emails that I answered or whatever the hell I had to do, but rather like all the activities belonging to work, including thinking about it or just randomly discussing it. Valuing those as work, I think is really important to give you a sense of like, well, maybe I didn't necessarily get my inbox to zero, but that's maybe also not the most important thing of my job. And so I don't have to give myself a hard time after I, had a really important discussion with my co-founder, but I didn't get to do those emails.
Yeah. And obviously, given the numbers that we've shared or what we've shared so far, it's gone really well for remote, over the last few or since inception. But is there anything that you would do differently, when you look back at the last few years?
Yeah, a million things. A million things. Like there's still things that I did last month that I think I would do differently. There's not one thing where I feel like, well, that was a really, really big mistake. I think you shouldn't hire friends, and I think I made that mistake. But at the same time, I don't know what the alternative was at the time, or maybe net was better. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing really particular. It's very easy to say like, oh, I would have done this differently. There's very specific projects as remote that we started that I had to kill after a while, and I would probably have done that earlier. And so maybe I would have been more trigger happy killing projects and focusing more on particular things. But that's easy to say afterwards, because for maybe there was a massive opportunity there that we didn't capture. And there's some things that we betted on. Like there's a few bets we made in the past few years where at the time it felt like a bad idea. And now it's like a great idea that pays off really, really well. So I don't know.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to move into the quickest fire round now, Job. What one thing has moved the needle the most for you in your career?
I have no idea. Just doing what I feel passionate about.
Doing what you feel passionate about. Okay. What about best advice you've ever received?
From Finding Dory. Just keep swimming. Yeah.
I like that. What about biggest failure you've made and lesson learned?
Biggest failure?
Yeah.
I don't recall. The lesson learned from every failure is just keep going. The sun will shine tomorrow as well.
Hardest thing about being a CEO?
It's lonely. You end up firing a lot of people you work with daily.
And have you got a favorite book on business? It doesn't have to be a business book, but a favorite book, what that is?
The favorite book that I have that is good for business leaders is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, because for negotiating, I think it's good. Other than that, I don't read a lot of business books. I think they're outdated quickly and they overemphasize like the one particular experience. So no, I don't read a lot of business.
Yeah. I shamefully, I have the books. I think my brother-in-law bought me Never Split the Difference, and I've still not read it. And,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's like easy to read as well. Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah.
I'm going to make it my my mission to read it before the end of the month.
Good.
As we sort of wrap up, like we mentioned at the top of the podcast, you're coming over to SaaS Europe, which is happening 14th to the 16th of October in Dublin. It's going to be our 7th edition, so excited for that. Is it going to be your first time in Dublin?
No, it's not. No, I've several colleagues there, so I've been there a few times.
Okay, awesome. Do you know already what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, about hyperscaling. With one of our board members, Hannah, I believe. So this will be really fun, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing that talk. And anything you're looking forward to about the conference or just coming back to Dublin?
I typically don't drink, but I do love one Guinness, so I think that's kind of a good one. I think that's one of the things, one of the highlights. And I think Dublin is a great place to be. So I always
Dublin's a real fun city. I can't stop at one Guinness. That's my problem, but I'm a big fan, and obviously the best Guinness is in Ireland. So if you're listening and you've never had a pint of Guinness, not that I want to convert you to alcohol, but convert you to Guinness. If you already drink alcohol, then you're going to find that it's great over there. And if people can't wait before Dublin, if they want to kind of find you online and reach out or comment after the podcast, where can people find you? Where are you most active or present?
On X at JOBVO.
Awesome, good stuff. Well, Job, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Dublin. Maybe we'll have a pint of Guinness together, just the one pint. But you'll see me have a few more afterwards. But looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being a great guest on the SaaS Revolution Show today and sharing with the SaaS community.
Thanks, Alex.